Hello, Yakri here with another Dominions 5 video. So this time we're going to go over blood magic, and because blood magic is mostly summoning, I have brought up the Dom 5 Inspector so that we can take a look at the various summons you get, right? We're going to be going through all the non-summoning spells as well, but I figured this would work better than in-game because you can't see what I'm looking at for checking all the summon stats and whatnot. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to go from level 0 to the end of level 3 for blood. Okay, so, bleed. It's terrible. It takes a blood slave. It doesn't do a whole lot. What's that, like area effect, cast time? It doesn't even say the damage. It causes, it doesn't do damage. It causes the person to start bleeding, as in the bleed effect. You can also resist it with magic resist. This is, don't waste your time with this. Sabbath Slave and Sabbath Master. These spells are the exact same as Communion Slave and Communion Master, but they have a higher fatigue cost, higher casting time, I believe, as well, and they require a Blood Slave to use. Sabbath Masters and Sabbath Slaves can participate in communions, so keep that in mind when forming communions. You can use blood mages as well. All right, blood burst. Let's see, blood burst is actually a little bit better. Area of effect 1, 11 armor negating damage. Does not what's the word I'm looking for here? Require a magic resist check. That's right. This is sort of useful, but costs blood slaves. Not a huge fan of it, but you know, it can actually hurt things. Blood heal. Well, it's a heal. At least it's a large one, but it only affects your caster. Not too bad. This could be neat in conjunction with communions because it's a caster targeting spell, so it'll affect all your communion slaves as well. Okay, reinvigoration. This is great. It removes all the fatigue on the caster by sacrificing a blood slave. This is actually extremely good, and extremely good in conjunction with communions. This can be one reason to move a Sabbath Master into a communion, so that then when on your last like scripted spell, you cast reinvigoration, cleansing fatigue off of yourself and all of your communion slaves. It's very powerful. Bind Shadow Imp. This is, actually, I guess I could potentially see using this. It is stealthy, yeah. So this is basically spend 4 blood slaves, summon a scout. Not a totally useless thing to try and do. It's quite stealthy. It doesn't fly, so that's unfortunate. But hey, you know, it's scout. It's 4 blood slaves is debatably cheaper than a regular scout. Blood slaves are relatively easy to come by compared to other gem sources. Summon imps. Not super great. It's a combat spell, and so in the early game, if you're a blood-heavy nation and perhaps one of your blood-hunting mages gets attacked, this could be a way for them to defend themselves, as 5 imps is a little bit of firepower, at least more than your mage is going to have, most likely. Blood Boil, one of the few blood spells that does not require the sacrifice of a blood spell. It deals 11 plus armor negating damage. This is actually pretty good. Targets one person, sure, but I mean, 11 armor negating damage, this is kind of like a shitty, no, it's kind of like a slightly better, higher fatigue cost Mind Burn. So actually not bad at all. Bind Fiery Imps. Alright, so this is a ritual. You get a better type of imp. You're probably not going to bother with this. Like, a lot of this early stuff in Blood, you just skip right past it. Don't bother with it, because these guys are kind of crappy. You just save your blood slaves for better summons, right? Banish Demon. Really good. Versus demons, it's a Soul Slay. Yeah, that's all there is to it. Also, it's not as good as Soul Slay because it costs a ton of fatigue and a blood slave. Bowl of Blood. Searches for blood sites. This isn't very good because there aren't a lot of blood sites. But on the other hand, 5 blood slaves is almost worth less than 1 gem once you get your blood income going, so that's kind of nice. Bone Fiends. Alright, these guys are a little bit good. Okay, HP, they do they actually fly? No, they don't, because their wings are all rotted through. Right. I mean, they're unusually good undead for 3 blood slaves for 5. It's actually pretty decent for blood too. Yeah, I'd say I'm a fan of the spell. Again, you still might skip past it in favor of getting to better things later on. So this is nice because it causes damage and fear in a large area of effect. Right? Now, it's not a lot of damage, sure, but if you can spam it out a few times, it can potentially rout a crappy morale army, right, in the early game. Kind of a desperation spell, but you may very well need to use it if you're rushing blood research. Okay, Fiends of Darkness. These are when you start to get some of the good blood summons. It's time inefficient because, of course, you're spending 5 gems and 1 whole mage turn to summon a single unit. But this is a quite elite unit, right? It's stealthy, it has 2 attacks, it has 30 hit points, it can fly, and it's a demon with a better than average stat block. You know, high magic resist, very high morale. It's pretty good. I don't think it's a 30 morale. 30 morale, even though it's not a commander. Yeah. It isn't a commander, is it? No, I don't think so. It says a unit. So, yeah. But it's a quite elite unit. And you're getting towards some of the more, the better, like, spammable spells. Spine Devils, kind of in a similar area. Poisonous Barbs isn't very useful, but they've got, like, a pretty solid stat line and 2 attacks, which are poisonous for 3 Blood Slaves. Not bad as far as early game summons go. But again, you're still probably going to skip past it. Okay, Hell Power. This one, I believe this works the same way as Power of the Spears. You gain a bonus. Bonus to magical power. Magic bonus 2 to all of your spellcasting schools. But you horror mark yourself, which will eventually get you killed, as a horror will probably come eat your soul sooner or later, right? But it's quite worth casting. I mean, especially in a communion. Right? I kind of have to be, because the fatigue cost is very high. You do something like this, like you cast Sabbath Master, right? And then you cast Hell Power, and then you cast Reinvigoration, and then you cast some big spell, probably not a blood spell, some big spell in another magic path you have that you've now boosted by +2 with Hell Power, and probably by an additional +1 at least by having 2 Sabbath Slaves. So that can be quite useful. Leeching Touch, this is melee range. It's very good, but it's melee range. It's probably not gonna be used ever. Theoretically, your mage might use it of their own volition while getting into melee combat, which would be neat, but not really worth mentioning. Crossbreeding, this is a spell that will create a bunch of misshapen like units that are really shitty for the most part. You get a decent number of units, and they have high strength, making them good for sieging. They're generally okay as chaff, especially for Blood Nations, because if you are not Pangea and you're thinking about doing this, you might not have access to a ton of chaff units. So this could be one way to get a bunch of just units to put in the front of your army to have eat arrows or something, right? But overall, this is not very good. It also does have a chance to generate some very like powerful units chassis-wise, and potentially you could do stuff like Gift of Reason them and turn them into thugs or something, right? Because there's like, I think you can get like an ogre with like 150 health or something crazy like that, but those results are very unlikely. There's some weird stuff with pathing and stuff that goes into crossbreeding. I could probably talk a lot about that, but it's a fairly weak spell, so I don't think I need to go into a huge amount of detail on this. This is kind of alright. Like, you buff yourself with this, and then when you get hit, if your mage gets hurt, the Blood Slaves take the damage, probably dying instantly. The downside is that you lose all your Blood Slaves and can't cast any more spells, and Blood Slaves are at least fairly valuable, so that's kind of a problem. Blood Feast. Now, this one, as I recall, cleanses you of afflictions. Yes. Okay, so this is really good for thugs. Like, from Niflheim, if you've thugged out one of your, what are they called? Jotun Scrotty, right? And maybe they've got a really, you got lucky and you got an actually very good heroic ability on them, and they've acquired too many afflictions, though, right? And they're not good anymore. So you cast Blood Feast on them, hopefully cleanse off all their worth mentioning afflictions, and they can go back out to slaughtering enemy provinces. I've even, at one point, I had a Jotun Jarl who had a very lucky, good, like, random path roll, and he also had a good heroic ability. It was like heroic battle prowess or heroic quickness or something particularly great, and I actually did use I empowered him up to Blood 2 and then used this to keep him going. And it can be quite worth it if you have like a borderline super combatant to use this on. Also, for example, if your pretender is not a blood mage normally, you could empower them up to Blood 2 and use this to cleanse their afflictions off if they don't normally have access to a means of cleansing afflictions. Devils. So these now we've gotten to an actual staple like summoned demon, right? Summoning devils is like a thing you do. These are a good late game unit when in sufficient numbers, and a good early game unit even if you only have 5 to 10 of them. 35 hit points, 8 protection is not great, but you know, high number of hit points, great stat block, they can fly, and they have a heat aura. So these guys, they go straight to the back of the enemy army and start killing their archers and stuff, hopefully killing some of their mages. They're just a pretty good unit overall, and they're a very good unit to buff, especially if you buff with like earth magic or something, so you can give them more protection. We're gonna get into more units on the same vein in Blood 3. Frost Fiends, same kind of thing, but cold based. You have to have that water cross path for these guys, just like you need the fire cross path for Bind Devil, and they're a little bit less direct combat oriented and have some cold things you need to take advantage of. For example, in cold provinces, ice protection will give them 3 additional protection, bumping it up to 8, which is not great, but at least not terrible like 5 is. And cold power can give them a +3 bonus to defense, putting it up to 20, which is actually crazy high, which is, you kind of need that to make them more durable and durable to the degree that you'd like them to be. Frost Blast is also kind of a nice touch, right? Dealing that AoE little, I think it's like 1 square AoE frost damage. Yeah, okay. So, let's see. Is this the one where you get... Oh, you create a ritual circle where you can cast rituals farther away. Potentially, this is worth using. You can use this to cast like some of the send horror spells later on. Really far away if you need to. Serpent Fiends, are these guys good? I don't remember. I don't think they're very good because they only have 1 attack and their stat block is a little more lackluster. Yeah, like once you, I guess if you don't have access to the cross paths to bind devils or frost fiends, these guys could be okay, but wouldn't recommend it otherwise. Their health, their hit points are a little bit low. Their stat block, like these stats are just a little bit low, and they only have 1 attack, right? And so it adds up to the situation where they're going to die a little too easily without doing as much damage as you'd really like them to do. Oh, whoops, that's Blood 4. My bad. We've already gone up to 3, so I'm going to call this good. End of part 1 of the video. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Yakri out.